Welcome to this episode of Come Back to Nature. My name is Gareth Blakesley. I'm the director here at Lake Catherine. And today I want to talk a little bit about planting things, mostly planting things from seed. And it's more of a gardening episode rather than more of a kind of a restoration thing. Now we're in the middle of March right now, so it really is too soon for people to start planting annuals outside, whether it be vegetables. There's maybe a couple of vegetables that you might be able to get going, but it really is too cold to plant outside. Usually you have to wait to kind of the beginning of May. People use Mother's Day. You can probably go a little bit earlier than that if you wanted to plant things from seed outside, or any kind of like tender annuals that you might actually have. But you can do some things inside right now. So you usually want to start things from seedlings about 4 to 6 weeks prior to like kind of the last frost date in your region. And traditionally the last frost date in our region is right at the beginning of May. If you have a greenhouse outside, you can start things a little bit earlier. So I'm going to go through what you can actually do and what you shouldn't do. So I have a grow tray in front of me. You don't need anything particularly special. What we have here is an under tray here, which actually has a place where you can put a reservoir of water to put in there, and you want to fill that up. And then these kind of kits kind of sit right on top like this, so you can actually kind of get your seedlings going. There's a couple of things I want to show the difference between these two things. You have this is from last year. I haven't cleaned it out. You do not want to use old compost. You want to make sure that it's kind of one of the reasons it might not be sterile, and you want to make sure you have a sterile environment for your seed to go because it kind of ensures the best success. You can get away with it sometimes, but it doesn't always work very well. It's also really dry. There is no point basically planting your seed in dust. You want to make sure that it's well kind of soaked in. So if you have compost, a lot of times when you buy compost from the store, it'll be kind of dry. What I tend to do is I put compost in a bucket of water, just let it sit overnight, and basically kind of absorbs all that water. The problem with a lot of compost, when it's dry, it's hydrophobic. Basically it repels water. But once it's wet, then it'll start to absorb. It's hydrophilic once it's kind of wet and it absorbs it. But you need to give it that time. The other alternative as well is that sometimes you can just pour water into your compost bag and just kind of let it sit overnight there, and it's ready to go all the time. And the bag keeps it nice and tight. So on the left, this is actually kind of regular sort of garden soil, or topsoil, I should say. It's better because it's damp, and you can feel it, you can see it, it's damp, it's good. That's actually sort of like the dampness of the medium that you actually want to kind of place for that. It's not the ideal mix, so you really probably want to find a seed compost mix. This still will work. And so you can do this like so, kind of even it all out nice and out, and then you've got this nice kind of like platform for where you can actually start putting your seed in. So you don't necessarily have to have a reservoir underneath it, but it does help. So you can get some water, and basically you kind of fill it up from underneath in this big reservoir. I'm not going to do it fully, but you kind of get the idea of what you actually want to do. But it has to touch the bottom of your seed trays. Because if it doesn't, it won't soak up into your seed trays, it won't keep the roots nice and moist, and that's really important. Sometimes better to do it from the bottom rather than from the top, because what that does is it helps keep this, you want to keep the roots nice and moist, and a lot of times when you see on top, you might add a little water, it might peel off, and it won't get down to the roots. So you want to keep this media damp throughout the whole seedling kind of experience. Okay. The other thing that we want to actually kind of do is we want to keep that moisture in. So you want to have some kind of mini greenhouse to go over it. Now, this is one that if you professionally buy it, you can have this kind of tray set up. It's very nice. But you can do this at home with just a regular tray, and you can put cling wrap over the top of it. It's just enough to kind of keep that moisture in, keeps the seeds from drying out, and all that kind of stuff. So this is great, keeps it nice. And once the seedlings start growing, you can take this off and give them room to kind of grow a little bit better as well. Now, I think I mentioned that we want to do this about 6 weeks prior to planting outside. So that's the frost date. Honestly though, every seedling that you might get, so whether it's sugar snap peas, whether it's contender bean, I'm not sure what contender bean is, but we're going to stick with something very simple like tomato. There's lots of different varieties of tomato out there. You should always read what the packet says about when you should actually sow this, because that's really important, because some have greater or lesser resistance to the cold, or they may be a late season growing or an early season growing. So some of these annuals also don't do well in the middle of summer as well, so it really does depend. And almost all of the labels that you have will tell you, so read the label I can't read this right now because I don't have my reading glasses on right now, but I assure you it tells you what you should actually, should and should not do. So that's always good to actually have on hand. Now, what I do know is for tomatoes in general, if I can see where I actually put it, you basically only want to put, like, you go down about 1/4 of an inch, and sometimes it's nice to have a little pencil or something like that, and you want to put 2 of these seeds per vegetable right here. Put 2 seeds in, cover it up, and as long as it's nice and moist, that should be pretty good. You can be able to see it over, so I'm going to do this. Don't overseed. You don't need to use that much. So put it down there. There's 1, 2, that's probably more like 3 or 4. Pat it down around it, and then what you can do is just a hint of moisture on top. You already got damp soil or compost, so you don't really need much. And you can see from that, what's nice about it is the soil, the water kind of soaked into the soil, and that's actually the kind of key thing. Then you can do that for all your trays and have it nice and ready, depending on your species. Now, I did 2 because what they want us to do with a tomato is that once one becomes stronger than the other, you basically got multiple plants growing here. You want the strongest plant, and once that strongest plant is kind of growing, you can actually pick out the other seedling. I know that sounds kind of counterintuitive to a lot of people because like you want everything to grow, but you want the strongest one to survive. You pull the other one out, and you just let the thing. And sometimes you can snip them a little bit and just let them kind of grow and do their thing, and that's actually great. Then you want to make sure that you put this over the top, and you'll have condensation building up on this, and that's absolutely fine. That's making it keep it moist. And as soon as it starts kind of greening up, as soon as it starts getting to the top of whatever you're, whether it's cling wrap, maybe it's cling film, maybe it's this, then you can take this off and kind of give it a little bit more breath to kind of grow. Let it grow until you're ready to plant outside. Now, if you're really lucky, you want to put this on like a really south-facing windowsill to make sure you've got plenty of sun. Some people claim that isn't enough sun, which is why sometimes you might want a little bit of a grow light, like one of these. This is a bit fancy, a bit Triffid-like, but you can just do a simple kind of grow light over the top, and you can get multiple, you want to make sure it has multiple UV, put this out of the way, multiple UV kind of rays available for it, so UVA, UVB, so make sure it has a full spectrum light for grow. They also just sell them as grow lights, and so you can sometimes just get a simple light bulb, plug it in, and off you go, and kind of keep it kind of close to the surface of it. You also want to make sure that you turn that off at night. You don't need growing periods all the time. Plants don't have light all the time. Think about like day length. That's how much light you want to actually kind of get it. So like up to 12 hours, that'd be absolutely fine. And then you can turn it off at night or have it on a timer. If you're lucky though, you have a really strong south-facing window, and that should give it enough light as well, so you won't have to do anything apart from just making sure it doesn't dry out and that kind of stuff. When it comes time to bring outside, it's also sometimes good not to necessarily plant them straight into the ground. You want a little bit of a hardening period. The hardening period basically means that they kind of get used to kind of like the conditions outside, the wind blowing or something like that. If you have a greenhouse, which not everyone does, but if you do have a greenhouse, that's a great opportunity to kind of get these outside a little bit earlier. The greenhouse stops it from getting too cold too soon. It kind of prolongs your period. It still can freeze in your greenhouse. So if you have a hard freeze coming, then it won't protect them. But if you have just a mild one, it'll be okay, and they'll do absolutely fine as well, because mostly they're insulated. And also the kind of the top over it kind of keeps it insulated as well. So these are some of the things that you can actually absolutely do to try and kind of start growing. Start the season nice and early. Make sure it's not like this. Make sure it's nice moist soil. Make sure you follow the directions of what you're actually meant to be doing. And then you can start your growing season nice and early, and then you can just transplant those little seedlings into the ground, into your, like a full sun, or read the label of where it wants to actually go. There's no point putting something in full sun in shade, and then you should be hopefully have some nice tomatoes earlier than other people, and much, much cheaper than buying plants that are already established as well. So it's a good way of doing that as well. So hope you enjoyed this episode of Come Back to Nature, and we'll see you next time.